what are the consequences of turning ourselves off? I had spoken in the Arti about not drinking milk. Unless, of course, you're living in a traditional situation where you've got a cow in your house and the cow is treated like a member of your family and cared for and loved, and you would never dream of killing the cow just because it no longer gives milk. And unless you're living in that environment, as very, very traditional Indian families did, milk is violence. And so she said, well, what if I hear that and I know that, but I like drinking milk? And so when I go to buy milk, I have to turn off that information about how harmful it is. What are the repercussions, the consequences to ourself when we have to turn off? I don't know of any scientific study on that could say, well, when you turn off, here is what happens to your immune system response, or here's what happens to your likelihood to be depressed or anxious. But my instinct is, from just the way it feels inside and what I know about human psychology, is that we are severely harming ourselves. Any way in which we restrict our consciousness, restrict our awareness, restrict our ability to be human, we're harming ourselves. If not physically, it may not have an impact on your immune system necessarily, the act of doing it. The milk will, but the act of shutting yourself off may not. But it's certainly going to have an impact on your emotional well-being, on your spiritual well-being. So if I know that milk is wrong and violent, but I shut that off so I can drink it anyway, I've just violated 1 and 2, the very core premise, the very foundation of a practice of yoga. So it doesn't matter how long I can stand on my head. If I violated the very core foundation, then it becomes what we would call acrobatics or calisthenics or 100 other things, but not yoga. It's only yoga if it's founded upon yama niyam. So the spiritual answer is easy. You've essentially shot yourself in the spiritual foot. You've handicapped your ability to rise spiritually if you are quite purposefully living in untruth, and especially untruth that allows violence to happen through you. It's the same things, by the way, that we told ourselves in America when slavery was legal. Oh, black people don't feel pain. I mean, if you read the stuff, the propaganda that was used to continue for slaves to be legal, your jaw would hit the ground today. You wouldn't know whether to laugh at the absolute absurdity or to just sob at the inhumanity. I mean, literally things like they don't feel pain. But we come up with all kinds of rationale to do what we want to do. But when you are living a life in which your choices require you to tell such violent untruths about people of a different color, people of a different race, people of a different religion, people of a different sexual orientation, if we need to tell ourselves lies about who feels what, oh, I know they don't feel. Well, of course they feel. Pick up any science textbook. They've got nervous systems. Of course they feel. But we tell ourselves these unequivocal untruths, undeniable untruths, just to enable us to continue to live the way we want to live. I mean, think about fast food restaurants. I don't know the prices in India because Even though I've lived here almost 30 years, I've never eaten out. But in America, you can walk into a place like McDonald's or Burger King or whatever it is, and at least when I was growing up, you could get a hamburger, a cheeseburger, a Big Mac for, 69 cents. And it would cost you several dollars to buy the salad there. It would cost you $15, $20 to walk into the restaurant next door and get a plate of pasta instead. But we don't ask ourselves, how is it that this meat is so cheap? How is it possible that this is only 69 cents when a plate of pasta is $15? We allow ourselves not to think so that we can keep living the way that we want to live. 69 cents, great. And we don't think about the ramifications. So spiritually, it's obvious how detrimental that is to live in that kind of illusion and falseness. On an emotional level, I also think it's really detrimental because even if you're not on a spiritual path, we all want our heart to be open. If our heart is closed, we cannot love. We cannot receive love. We cannot live in joy and ecstasy and peace. If our hearts are closed, we are lonely and miserable. But if I need to push away the truth of the world in order to live how I want to live, I've got to close my heart. Whether to the women and children in the sweatshops, whether to the cows and how they're being treated. And so I'm shutting down my heart. I'm also doing one other thing, which is spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, very, very damaging. Which is, I'm teaching myself that I am the type of person who is prepared to overlook untruth when it suits me. I'm giving myself a very detrimental message, which is, if it suits me, I can look the other way. And what that means is my entire self-identity shifts into, I'm one of those types of people. I may like it, I may not like it, I may be proud of it, I may not be proud of it, but either way, I know what I've done. Consciously or subconsciously, my inner knowing knows exactly the truth I have pushed away. Which means when I think about myself now, I'm not a warrior for truth, a warrior for love, someone who embodies that. I'm now someone who, if it suits me, I can look the other way. And that is not the type of self-identity that you want to have, because that becomes what we call a slippery slope. And then you start to discover that you can look the other way for other things because, hey, I'm the type of person who looks the other way. And for anyone on a path of spirituality, we've got to be committed to truth at all costs, at least with ourselves. With others, Bhagavan Krishna tells us in the Gita that right speech, what he calls tapas of speech, is that which is true, but also kind and beneficial. So when you're telling something to someone else, you have to also ask yourself, well, it may be true, but is it also kind and beneficial? And if not, we don't speak it. But in terms of ourselves, it has to be truth at all cost, whatever it may be. Full truth, complete truth, we like it, we don't like it. It's convenient, it's not convenient. Otherwise, how can we live? How can we live if we're lying to ourselves?